Today we are looking at chapter 2, the African perspective on ethics. We need to reflect on two important things. One, that African view of ethics is drawn from everyday life. Secondly, that it often conceals reflective insights into human nature and actions. In other words, ethics is within because we live it, and it's what we are, but it must be reflected from what we live, things that are visible, things that people can see. Therefore, in this perspective, we want to look at three objectives. One, that should be able to explain the role of community in the African ethical life. The role of community. What does the community do in an individual life? Its role. Secondly, we discuss the foundations of values and norms in an African worldview. A worldview is a perspective given by different people, but on a particular item, a particular thing. So they have different views. Africans view life in a different way, and they attach different values compared to other societies. Then thirdly, we should be able to identify stories, proverbs, and other means of moral training in your society. Training undertakes different ways how we impart knowledge or understanding of the environment where we live. So, in this way, we want to identify such as stories and proverbs or other means that Africans used to train members of the society how to live an ethical life. Traditionally, Africans do not talk about ethics. It is like you don't talk much about yourself because it is evident, it is seen. You don't go about singing to people and say, this is who I am, this is how I look like, and so on. Because you are seen, you are experienced through what you speak, what you say, where you live. So ethics is really part of an African way of life, and therefore they don't need to keep on talking about it. And this does not mean that they lack morality, because ethics, as we said in chapter 1, it determines people's morals. It is a way of life, a moral way of everyday life. So we don't need to talk about it every day, but that does not mean that we are lacking morality or we are lacking a sense of right and wrong. But it is because morality permeates African life to the point that it cannot be separated from human existence. Now let me bring this one. For example, it may not be very relevant, but it can bring out what we are saying here, that we don't need to keep singing. Human beings we are because of what makes us to be like. Eating, for example. Eating is part of our life. And when we want to live, we look at the type of food that makes us live. Not every food, not everything. So we look for the good food. And that one cannot be separated from our existence. Communication between us is part of our life. What do we communicate? It's part of our existence. So we don't keep talking about how we communicate, because we know if what we are going to communicate is going to make sense, then the way how we communicate must be part of our life. So morality permeates African life to the point that it cannot be separated. You cannot separate human relationship, for example, because we live through those relationships. So, to be human and to be a member of the human community, one must act like human. You cannot act like an animal and you expect fellow human beings to understand you or relate with you. You must look at values that make you who you are so that you can fit in the community, associate with them, relate with them, and then you live your everyday life in comfort. So for this part, we say proper conduct excuse me, is part of life. Proper conduct. How do you speak? How do you relate or associate? For example, greeting is the proper conduct in the community. You cannot expect to relate with people if you don't exchange greetings. And greetings is an inquiry. How are you? How about your people? And therefore, to live this kind of life, you greet to know that the people you are relating with are faring well. They are doing well. You are also well, because when you exchange with somebody, that person will also ask you, how are you? In some cultures, if you pass by without greeting people, they will regard you inhuman. So each member of the community learns and conforms at an early age. And in this case, it is very important for me and you to make sure that we do what other people in the community expect us to do. In other words, there are standards of behavior which are expected for relationships and are part of the community living. I talked about greetings. In certain cultures, they expect some people to greet while they are kneeling. So in this case, you have to make sure that you conform to certain standards of the community. A person needs to learn how to behave. So you don't need lessons, because where you live, you see how things are done. You grow knowing and seeing. So all you need is to live as part of the community. Because as we said, you cannot live in isolation. You have to be a member of the community, behave like them, talk like them, so that they can identify you and you identify with them. Ethics is described as the study of morality and values, good or wrong, and we attach values, what we benefit, what is good for you as an individual or good for the community. Because you cannot identify what is good for you as a value which does not benefit others. Community life attaches certain values on their life, what you benefit and as well as what others benefit. And at the end, it has a reward, it has a benefit. So it focuses on the standard and code of conduct that govern behavior of an individual or group. For that matter, Africans cannot keep silent about ethics, about wrong and good things. They have to talk about them. They share. They tell their children who are growing to know the dividing line between what is valuable and what is not valuable, what is moral, what is immoral, what is good or what is bad. So Africans are a community of people. When we talk about community, that is what brings you together so that you live a particular ethic, a particular tradition. Their ethics are therefore embedded in the life of the community with a concern for one another. We are concerned, and Africans are known to have concern for one another. And this concern grows within them. That's why I can come to your home from an African worldview or perspective. What belongs to you belongs to me. So if I want a panga, I want a hoe, I will come to where you keep the hoes, and maybe I can ask, are you going to dig? Do you need it? That one I can ask. But if I find that the hoe is redundant, it's not being used, I may not even ask. After greeting you, I pick the hoe and go. And the person will know that I need the hoe. And when I have finished digging, I bring it back. So, with that concern, you don't ask somebody, where are you taking it? Where are you taking it? Why didn't you ask for it? In an African way of life, respect is part of our morality. So, we know that even when somebody picks what you want, what belongs to you, we know that it is respect, that you don't ask questions of where are you taking it, because you know automatically that he needs it or she needs it. So in this case, we refer to John Donne, who said that no man is an island. Islands, we know. Islands in oceans or seas, they can be very close to each other by a distance of meters. But none of these can move to each other. They don't share. They are in the same area, same waters, but they don't talk to each other. They don't move to each other. So you can see about how human beings cannot live in that way of life. We cross each other's path. We share. We talk. We relate. Through intermarriages, through business, through other things. So you cannot find a man in isolation. Human beings cannot live or thrive in isolation. In other words, thriving is making life comfortable for you and productive. You cannot be productive when you are isolated from others, because what makes you productive is a relationship between you and those around you. You are a farmer, but you need education. You are an educated person or farmer, you need a doctor. You need a spiritual person. So, you cannot be isolated. In this case, Africans cherish the sense of interdependence or coexistence more than Westerners. And when we are talking about this one, we are not insulting or blaming the Westerners. You know, certain contexts demand certain way of life. And you find that because we are interdependent and coexistent, we live our open homes and other things that we share in life so that others can benefit. But you find that now we have adopted Western way of life in a sense that we are living in fenced houses with brick walls, and as a result, you cannot easily come to a fellow African unless you go through the gates. And yet formerly Africans did not have these fences and gates. You will only announce yourself when you have even entered the house, as long as it is open. But today, to enter an African home, you first go through the gate, which gate is, guarded by a security man or gate man who will ask you who you are, even when you are going to see your father or your mother or your brother, who you are. You wait. Let me first inquire. Let me first ask. That sometimes even your brother may say, this man did not have an appointment with me, because we are living in a Western way of culture that has been influenced. So this is where we find ourselves. But Africans cherished a sense of interdependence. We live together. This determines community life, living and behaving as members of the community. This brings relationships, which are central components of African moral life. Relationships. When we are in a community, we relate in many different ways. And when you look into the African way of life, evenings were always good time for people coming together. They talk about social life, they talk about their economy, they talk about their religious way of life. They socialize because that was very central component. So this community life extends to the departed ones. It is not confined to the living ones. It even goes back to the departed ones, who are referred to as the living dead, because they are believed to have a continuing role in the community. My father, my grandfather. Africans believed that blessings and curses may come in one's way of life if you please or you disappoint the spirits of the dead, people, your ancestors. And as a result, they would pay good homage through different sacrifices or rituals in order to appease them if they are disappointed, or to appreciate them if they are happy and they have brought a blessing in a family. So they were believed to have a continuing role in the community. If a young couple marries and they don't get children, sometimes it was believed that maybe the spirits of the departed ones are not happy. So they will have to make sure that they appease them. And when they are happy, they bless the family with pregnancy and get children. That is one of the many examples in an African setting. So the community also, excuse me, also must remember those who are coming in the society, the next generation after us. So they must preserve this kind of tradition we have also picked from the departed ones, and other resources, and the community life will be embodied in the future. In other words, it is community life in an African setting is a chain or a link. We who are present, we are linked to the past and linked to those who are coming. Soon or later you will be married, or some of you are already married, you have children. So if you have children, you have to prepare a future for them. Such a culture that they will inherit, which you also inherited. So in an African way, community life, a tradition or a culture, is handed over from the past to the present, from the present to the future. So we cannot neglect them. We have to remember these people. The community depends on maintaining the relationship among the living and the dead and the yet to come. So, in other words, even when we are living and the past contains many people who have died, our great-grandfathers, our fathers, and so on, we have to keep in contact with them because we believe that their spirits have a role to play in our present life. And then for us also, we have a role to play in the yet to come. We prepare for them. If they come, what will they find? What are the good values of life that they will have to inherit? Because African community life does not die. It continues. That's what we call traditions or culture. What you find and you maintain. Therefore, there are crucial links in the chain of life. It is like a baton in a relay. You hand over the baton to the next person to another, if the relay has to be completed. But if the relay, somewhere in the middle, somebody drops the baton, the link is broken, and they really will not be completed, it becomes a failure. Life is a principal value. We live, and therefore we cannot expect other things to happen in life if we don't live. And when we are talking about life, we are not talking about only breathing, waking up when you say I am alive. No, life is observed in things that we do, things that happen around us as human beings. So it is a principal value. We live in order to act. So it is maintained and upheld and is embodied in marriage and family. If God will allow, towards the end of the semester, we'll deal with this subject of marriage and family, because the existence of the community comes into our life through marriage and family. So that's why marriage was a very important part of life. They call it the rite of passage. And through that marriage, you make a family, and the family sustains the community. African worldview and ethics. This presupposes the interaction between God and humanity and the rest of creation. Traditional African worldview is holistic, is all around. It deals with the spiritual and the material, and there is no way we can avoid it. Here we find different realms constituting the cosmos, the world where we live. Many different ways of things that we look at that make the universe where we live. We don't look at ourselves as the only existing creation. We have animals, we have these other things that make the cosmos, the sun, the moon, the stars, and so on. The African universe is made of supernatural and spiritual realities. So we talk about God, we talk about angels, we talk about other things. But also there are those spiritual realities we talk about, like those ones we have referred to. Sometimes you say the spirits are not happy, the spirits are disappointed. Then we have human society, because it is part of the universe. Animals, plants, and all other realities. And Africans believe, like we read in the Bible, that each of these plays an important role in the existence of the cosmos, but above all, in the life of us as human beings. So traditional African society affirms the essential unity through myths, rituals, and other forms of social religious symbolism. And in this case, if we are talking about the supernatural, we talk about God. And we refer to God as a mercy giver to human beings. We live because of God's mercy. African societies describe him as the merciful one. There are other religions which include Islam and Christianity, and they attribute mercy to God. African people believe God to be generally far off, far away, interacting with humans and the world through mediatory good spirits and or the spirits of the ancestors. In other words, we don't see God very near. As such, we go through the intermediaries, like the good spirits. It can be even a good spirit of your father or your grandfather, as long as that person lived a good life and is appreciated. You can talk to God to bless you with a pregnancy, to bless you with happiness through that good spirit of your ancestors. But also you can use other natural spirits. However, God is near in times of danger, anxiety, difficulty, and need. If you can look at your personal life and the lives of those around you, when we are living a comfortable life, Sometimes we don't talk to God because everything is okay. Children are there, food is there, accommodation is there, and others. So God is somebody who is far away. But when danger comes, and anxiety and other things that are affecting your life negatively, you begin talking to God as if he was human, very close to you. So in this perspective, we see Africans looking at God being essentially good because he will answer to their problems. In this case, Africans' perspective on God is that he is a great ancestor, the founder or progenitor, the giver of life, the power behind everything that is. Morality comes from to people from God through our ancestors. God is the initiator of people's way of life and morality. And God has a personality and a will which governs the universe and the life of humankind. So, it is an immutable will, something we can say it is beyond. It cannot be. When we talk about immutability, it cannot be challenged. There is nothing equal to that. So a person has to invoke God's will or accept it in situations that seem beyond human power. There are certain things that come our way, like when we lose our loved ones, or when somebody very good in our society becomes very sick, like we see the story of Job. And we say God's will is exercised in justice because we say it is immutable. If we believe that what happens in our life is God's will, so it is exercised in a just way and not questionable. The divinely initiated morality is closely tied to community living on earth. So the person who respects community relationship also pleases God. God is happy because the community of people is God's will, God's making. So if you respect the community relationships, God is happy. Conversely, one who upsets community order or offends a fellow human, he also offends God and displeases God. This brings us to look at ethics in context. What deals with us where we are in a community? Ethics is woven in the fabric of community life in Africa. In other words, fabric like a cloth. Some of you have got materials that have many different colors, and these different colors, we can regard them as many different ways of life, where you find you engage farming, you engage business, you engage politics, you engage. So that is the many colors that are woven to make a fabric that you put on. So ethics is woven in each part of those ones. Because if ethics is not woven in each of those, they cannot come together to make a fabric. They will not come to make sense. However, different ethical standards may apply to different communities in different times. You as people who are studying different professions like medicine, like law, so when you go to other communities which are not like your profession, you will find that what you have believed as a lawyer or as a doctor or as a social worker may not work where you are going to be, because they are people with different understanding, with different contexts of life. So even when ethics cuts across, makes a fabric, but each of these materials used to make the fabric have different characteristics. So that implies different cultures, different languages, social structures, economics, or politics. Those are the ones that make a fabric. People should have and behave according to the standard of the community in which they live and find themselves. Behave according. You are a medic, you are a lawyer, you are a business person. You must behave according to that particular community where you live. So some morals may apply in one area but not in another, or at one time but not at all time. The way how you behave as a doctor or as a lawyer is not the same way as a business person behaves. It's not the same way as a taxi driver will behave. So it is important for a person to learn the ethics of a particular situation, such that when you leave like your class or you leave your area at work and you go home, the context is different. Then you must learn, how do I live within the home context? If you go in the market or you are traveling on a bus, how do I behave even when I'm a doctor or a lawyer? How do I behave among fellow passengers or in a market? And you can make necessary adjustments to make personal principles befitting where you are. And this maintains harmony, or it requires us to maintain harmony. In order to maintain harmony and community relationships in African life, the values of the community and the community must be upheld if we have to maintain harmony. Like you hear the Uganda Law Society, the Uganda Medical Society of Fraternity, whatever you call them. Why do you have to make that kind of community called the Medical Society or the Law Society or whatever? Why? And in some cases, in fact, you have to legally register to be a member, because there is something very important to maintain harmony among fellow workers. And then you have a particular focus on what you want to deliver within your profession. In an African worldview, community includes all creation and the spiritual realms, as we had said earlier. True harmony or balance, making positive life for all, must take in account environment and natural resources and other creatures, God, the spirits, and the living dead, as well as the human community. And this answers the reason why when we fail to maintain harmony, then we have what some people have termed as hazards of life. Others, they have called them natural calamities and whatever. Today in Uganda we have an example where people have failed to maintain harmony with the environment. We find landslides, a lot of floods, we have so many things happening, and it has caused what we have termed as global warming, attributed to a number of things, because we lack harmony. And when we are talking about harmony, it means that human beings should learn how to live with animals, live with plants, live with rivers and lakes and so on, respecting their importance in life. There are those who think that certain things can be removed away, they are not important. As a result, we find that some people have started building in swamps, which are waterways or water catchment areas, and so on. And as a result, things are happening negatively. We are experiencing hot temperatures, or sometimes unexpected heavy rains. So if harmony is not maintained, problems arise in the community. And that points out that we lack environmental ethics, resulting into disharmony. Problems could also arise out of the earth or disrespect for other forms of created life, or failure to be in harmony with nature. Give an example. In Busite Mound, which is in the eastern or Chivale Game Reserve, some people have interfered with the environment where most of the wild animals live, like the chimpanzees, like the baboons and the monkeys. And as a result, these monkeys, their habitation has been destroyed. They are looking for where they can live, how they can get their food. They have started to attack human beings because their habitation has been destroyed. There has been no harmony. As a result, they are reacting in a negative way. Those who are burning charcoal, they have destroyed so many acreages of forests where these animals used to stay. So as a result, they go out to look for food, they look out to look for where to live, and they have attacked people. So community failures may result from moral failure, either by an individual or a wider community behavior. So as a result, we need to think and look at this properly. Spiritual powers. Spirits and the living dead need to be respected and appeased in order to maintain harmony, involving rituals. When rituals are performed, the intention is to bring an understanding and acceptance where maybe life has been distorted and the spirits are disappointed. Community rites contributing to respect and appeasement, consisting of pouring portions of new drink on the ground to remember the ancestors. So when some people would harvest or they have made a new drink, they pour on the ground to show that they are linked with the departed ones, and therefore they can receive blessings for better production, for better life. So spiritual powers can be consulted for good or for evil intentions. Many Africans consider the heart to be the center of internalized ethics. What we do, what we others see of us, come right from the heart. The Bible also says that what comes out is a result of what is inside. So it is the seat of will, human will, the memory, and creativity, which are all closely related to character. The way how you behave is dependent on your will from your heart. So a diviner, shaman, or other spiritual practitioners may be consulted to use spiritual powers benevolently, like healing illness or causing a failed blessing and bringing a failed conception. Magic and sorcery are also real in African worldview. We have come up looking at African societies being influenced by the Western world, but also in the Western world they believe in sorcery and magic. So still here in Africa, magic and sorcery are real. Those practicing them do not hold places of respect in the community because they bring negative impact in the community. Therefore, the community does not appreciate them. However, some sorcerers sometimes have knowledge even of secret conduct so that nothing remains hidden. I was looking at a video where a thief who stole certain things, I don't remember what, but they could not get him. So they involved magic and sorcery, and they caused a swarm of bees to come and surround his hands, identifying him as the thief. And as a result, they have caught this thief who was not known to people. So if magic and sorcery was not employed, this person would not have been discovered. Then private immorality, theft, lying, and lust should be avoided. When we are saying should be avoided, because if you do it, even in the private, the employment of magic, the employment of sorcery will discover you. So some people succumb to using spiritual powers maliciously even when it is not necessary. And community problems sometimes are attributed to sorcery, bringing curses and witchcraft. However, this someone may be or may have a spiritual cause without human component. If, for example, there is hailstone that has destroyed crops, thunderstrike that has killed people, a lot of rain that has, recently I have been reading, if you have time, you log on your internet and look at the drying Zambezi River. The drying Zambezi River. I happen to have been one of those who have gone to this place recently. And the river is so wide, so wild, with a lot of water. But unfortunately now, it has dried. And I have seen somebody walking across the river which was feared. But walking on for some parts of the river is complete sand. And we don't attribute that one to human activity. It is a natural disaster. But somewhere, somehow, we might also be involved. But that one, we say, cannot be attributed to a human component. It is natural. So sometimes the gods or the spirits act inexplicably, and humans just receive what comes to us, like I have said. Now Zambia is suffering drought, no electricity, no water, because the water that was going in the dam has dried. So this is the element of fatalism in an African worldview. Fatalism, if we go to the biblical worldview or theology, we call it predestination. It was destined to happen like that. So fatalism, if somebody dies by a car accident, or somebody dies young, or something happens which is negative, they say that is fate. That is one's fate. So you can't change it. Africans had methods of moral formation. Africans are schooled in the morals of bravery, gratitude, patience, honesty, perseverance, and justice. They are schooled. You grow in the home school where you see how a brave person behaves, or what constitutes bravery, gratitude, and so on. These meet the expectations of the community, because each member of the community is supposed to be a brave member, because you in one way or the other, you have to be relied on for protecting your community members. And if you're not brave, it means the community members might be in danger. At one time, you are asked to join community members to go and fight your enemies or wild animals. There also being gratitude for what has happened. A member of the community must understand that it is very important to express your gratitude for the good things you have received. Then being patient, being honest, all these, when you look at them, you have to grow knowing the importance of those things in a community, because they meet the expectations of the community. When you breach any of those, or you breach the expectations of the community, they result into punishment. Where you fail to deliver or you do it wrongly, the community will punish you. So besides the rules and punishments, you get examples of good character to emulate. You grow. Our parents will be pointing to you, such a good person, such a good deeds, and then you emulate. You are modeled according to such a people, of good character. And people can be referred to in stories or imaginations. And stories may be bringing out people who lived, or in form of animals or other ways, but to bring out the point of modeling you to community expectations. Youth are expected, or were expected, to glean or to pick and apply principles and values through observation and imitations, and listening to the stories and proverbs from their elders. And therefore, you find there were storytelling. Stories were known to be deposits of tradition even up to the present time. You want to deliver a lesson or a teaching, you tell a story, like Jesus used to teach through parables. Parables were stories. They are important teaching methods. You don't need to tell somebody plainly, because it cannot be understood unless you give a story in which the truth is embedded. They bear important historical, cultural, and religious significance. They explain the state of the world, the origin of people, and community identity and experiences. Here in Uganda, they explain the origin of people with the first person. According to the Chiganda World Review, the first person was called, forgetting this name, but his wife was called Nambi. And in the Bible, the first person, the first wife, the first lady is called Eve. And the first person is called Adam. But when you come to the Chiganda, it is a different thing. It's very different. So the stories are used to explain how the world comes into existence, human beings, the first human beings, then the community identity, the first community. We see Adam and Eve and their children, and the experience of the environment they lived in. So realities of life, like sickness, happiness, death, need for corporate life, harmony, and dangers of breaking social norms are experienced through storytelling. Stories helped to make moral decisions. They would refer to your culture and other known cultures. So you can pick a story that can make you, or can help you make a moral decision, how you understand moral decisions we make in our everyday life. Then Proverbs. Proverbs are expressed, or they express general truth and give advice. I would say it is good to read through the book of the Proverbs in the Bible. Even if you may not be believing in the Bible, you do, but they will help you to see how Proverbs helped people to look at life, to look at morality, and be ethical. So Proverbs are, as Chirua Chebe said, that they are the palm wines with which words are eaten. He is using this kind of proverb to say that if you want words to sink into the understanding of the people, you use Proverbs, because Proverbs say more than what ordinary words would say. So if you are eating food and you want food to go very well into your stomach, you drink, and according to the West Africans, the drink they would use was wine, and as a result they would use wine in order for food to get into their tummy. Proverbs give wisdom to life, to be wise, or how to live a wise life, and they are characterized by humor and imagery. They are words for word, and they state moral facts plainly. Iji in Chiganda they say gunsinze aliwa bitono. This is a Chiganda proverb, meaning that if you plead guilty, you pay very little, or your punishment is reduced. And this normally happens when you hear to people in courts of law, you hear the judge saying, since we have not given hard time to the court, we have reduced on your sentence. But when you plead too much and you don't want to accept what is true, then the punishment becomes greater. They are sometimes symbolic, using figures and pictures to interpret and convey meaning. E.g., waiting for too long spoils the banana, meaning people who delay often fail to get what they want. Maybe I was looking at this one like people who squeeze juice out of bananas. There is a process, but if it goes beyond the process, then the bananas may not produce the juice they want. So in life, don't wait too long or delay, because what you want may never come out. We talked about patience and impatience. This must be measured within the outcome. What will come out of my delay, my patience, and so on. Proverbs teach the value of patience and the danger of impatience. Proverbs can be used in conversation, public speech, settling disputes, and in ritual practices. I don't know at your level of practice whether it will be permissible to use Proverbs if you are going to deliver a service, either like you in your profession, like medicine, like law, whether you will find it easy to apply a proverb that can give a patient or a client an understanding of what should be and what should not be. Because these proverbs preserve and inculcate social values. How do you relate? You are a professional, but you are relating with lay people. How do you bring them to an understanding of the services that you are going to deliver? How do you bring them to an understanding that the service you deliver is good for them? So, you have to encourage good conduct. Person warning person warning of bad behavior and practices. They address issues of joy and sorrow, good and bad, right and wrong, rights and duties, justice and injustices. So you can see how important it is as we talk about the use and application of proverbs. Sometimes some difficult things may be hard to say with a plain tongue or language. I'll give you an example. It is proverbial. Two people that in the past, people just dressed lightly, no pants, no what. So one is saying, a certain mother was in a marketplace selling certain things, seated together with her child, but she was seated badly, and it became very difficult for the child to tell the mother that, look, the way how you are seated is embarrassing, things are looking at you. And moreover, the child was not supposed to look at the nakedness of the mother. But wisdom came to the child, and the child said, Mommy, stand up as you sell. Otherwise, if you keep seated, the people will cheat you. They will cheat you. You stand, you will sell better. And the mother stood up. And when the mother stood up, that covered her nakedness. Another one, I'm told, was a gentleman. And when the boy saw that he could not tell the father the way how he sat, he came close and said that, Daddy, you know I feel very comfortable when I sit between your legs and I sit there. And in so doing, when he sat, he covered. That is a way of, speaking the truth in another way, and you cover the meaning, and then somebody will be able to understand. That is maybe clear or not clear, but a proverb, we say they are words for word. They cover up, but then the hearer must be able to attach very important meaning. Taboos. Taboos are like the legal African system of the do's and the don'ts, which we find also in the Bible, embedded in the Ten Commandments and others. So traditional African culture had no written legal document outlining legal and illegal behavior. So what the community did, it set up standards which were and are still taught through different methods, using family, community members, and elders. What a member of the community had to learn are the standards required. And that standard is what we may call the legal system, which was defined by taboos. So, taboos formed a code of conduct. Taboos are prohibitions of forbidden practices and can include places, can include times, events, people, and actions. For example, there are places which were believed to be dangerous, like walking alone in the forest, like doing other things. So, in order to cause you understand, they may use a taboo and say, if you walk in that forest, you may never produce. If you walk in that forest, you will lose an eye. And then to a person, say, how can I lose an eye by going into this forest? Why can't I go there? Stop going there. So in doing so, you are protecting your life. So there are certain things that the community, African community, believed that they should not be done for the protection of the members of their communities. And those are the ones called taboos. They protected society from pollution and violation, For example, if they wanted to protect their young ones from having sex prematurely because sex was supposed to be experienced within the marriage, then there are certain things they would tell them. And if you violated them, then you would get punishments. And these punishments would be executed in the public eye so that it protects others from doing a similar thing. These were social norms for protecting life and well-being of the whole society. They instill discipline and good behavior, e.g., a child does not whistle at night or else the father dies. Now, who wants to lose a father? Because whistling at night was regarded as discipline. It is a time for people to relax and rest. And a child who whistles at night is regarded as indisciplined child. So they attached something. They say, if you whistle at night, your father will die. Who wants a father to die? No. So it stops the child from whistling at night. And you grow knowing, even when you become mature like we are, we don't whistle at night. Maybe for those who are walking at night, but in fear, you cannot also whistle. Therefore, this was meant to grow a disciplined child, and many other things similar to that. And when you break the taboo, it becomes a serious offense that required sacrifice for forgiveness in order to avert danger from God's ancestors. You have broken the community norm, therefore you have to be disciplined, to be punished. In so doing, punishment was intended to instill discipline, but also it required a sacrifice, something that you must sacrifice in order to regain acceptance in the community. And the sacrifice must be costly, because they believe that if you don't make a sacrifice, then the danger is likely to come to you as an individual or come to your family or the society from the gods. So in order to avoid that danger coming to the community or the family, you are punished. And through that punishment, the gods are happy and you might be forgiven, even the ancestors. So taboos in an African setting generally included murder. Don't murder. Don't commit suicide. Don't commit adultery. Don't steal. Don't overlook authority. And many others. And if you did any of these, then the punishment was there. Taboos were not challenged or changed. Is a law like the law code we have in the Bible. Thou shalt not steal. You cannot change it and say, as we shared the other time, that because I was poor, because I was hungry, I had to steal. Steal, it is a negative conduct to the society. So you have to be punished. So you don't challenge it and say, even if you say that I should not steal, but suppose I am hungry. You don't change that one in order to suit you or challenge it and say, that is too old. So in this case we say, these were theoretical, open to change. They were theories because Africans did not write down. They were theories imparted to young people who are growing. They were not written. Sometimes practically they would be found very difficult, but they were open to change in order to meet the needs of the changing societies or the context. You will find, as I said, I think this I mentioned to the law school, we have the penalties which were instituted here by our colonialists or colonial masters. That if somebody, for example, I think it was either committing adultery or something, the charge is 200 shillings. 200 shillings in that time, it was too much. But today, 200 shillings. Is it a compensation? Is it what? It doesn't. I think it buys a matchbox. So what we are saying that it might be very good that when you commit a crime, you must be charged, but the charge should be relevant to the context and the changing times. So in conclusion, we have to make an evaluation that the values, principles, and worldviews explain and sustain African ethics, which we say that they are deep and insightful. We can adapt a new changes and situations. We don't remain where we found things. But also we say we must be strong enough to remain faithful to core commitments and beliefs. African negative cultures can be challenged, e.g. female circumcision. We still have some people in Uganda who are practicing female circumcision, like in the Sabine. But this one needs to be challenged because it undermines human dignity, human values. There is a solid base to African ethics that can often line up with Christian values. In other words, you are Christian, you are African. There are those African and Christian ethical values that can cut across. The African ethics can still provide a strong moral tradition for African Christian youth. In other words, you are either a medic, or you are a legal practitioner, or you are a social worker, where you find that Christian values demand the way of life. But also you are an African. In other words, there are certain things that when you become Christian, they don't die in you as an African. But also when you are an African, there are those things that require you to adopt as a Christian. So African ethics can help address contemporary environmental issues like land usage. How do we use land? The global warming, we have already talked about these ones. How do we treat all other parts of creation well in order to preserve life that would be good for all? Because for people who have degraded the environment, it is now coming to us all. When rain is too much or no rain, is drought, we are affected. We are affected. One individual may bring community dilemmas. So African principle of continuing and preserving life can raise ethical questions, including, in your case, euthanasia, suicide, sexuality like homosexuality, and birth control. And you find that the legal system sometimes steps in to challenge or to support. But remember, we are advocating for the continuity of the community. So some of these, if we promote them, like euthanasia, like suicide, like sexuality in terms of homosexuality, then we are denying harmony in the society, continuity in the society. For our review, try to consider ways in which African ethics are consistent with Christian ethics, that they move along together, and the ways in which they are not, where they cannot move together. Overall, would you say African ethics are mostly similar or mostly different from Christian ethics? So you need to think through as we progress through this course. And it is very important for each one of us to take time and think through before we move to the next stage.